Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank all the witnesses for being here and being candid and straightforward, and particularly grateful for your assurances that what has happened to some passengers in recent weeks and months and other times when they didn't necessarily get recorded on video. We appreciate your assurances that that will never happen again, and I'm sure everybody in the country will be watching to make sure that those assurances are fulfilled, and we're grateful and thank you for that. I'm going to just quickly, as I can, relate a recent incident and then ask you to respond. My colleague, Congressman Lewis, and I were at the airport a couple weeks ago on a Thursday, and because of weather, our flight was delayed and then delayed again and delayed again. And nobody was able to get any opportunity to discuss with anybody on the airline any alternatives that might be made available. Our distinguished acting chairman, Mr. Duncan, pointed out that some years ago, people in Russia had to wait to as many as 4 days to get an alternate flight. Well, that's exactly what happened to us here in our nation's capital. After the flight was finally canceled, again, no opportunity to talk with anybody, to get any information about anything, nobody offering compensation for hotels or food, or nobody offering to put anyone on another airline. Everybody was just unilaterally informed that they wouldn't be able to get a flight out until the following Monday. And of course, it was Cherry Blossom Festival, and hotels are running $500–600 a month, a night. And needless to say, there was a lot of very upset people, and understandably so. Mr. Lewis and I were able to get a couple of tickets to a nearby city, and through a number of efforts, including my granddaughter, able to get back home. But there was, because the airline was overbooked in every flight, there was no place in America we could fly to and catch a connecting flight to get back to Minneapolis, Minnesota. I never would have believed that was possible. For crying out loud, we could have flown to London and back and gotten home in a timely manner. So my question of each of you, and I know we only got 5 minutes here, but what kind of policy does each of you have for compensation for people that are caught in those circumstances? I understand weather caused the initial, but can we extend the cause of weather to the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day? I mean, what kind of compensation do you offer? What kind of alternatives do you offer for other airlines? And what kind of communications do you offer to your customers in a situation like that, which is so troubling and confusing and difficult for so many airline passengers? Please.
Thank you, Congressman. And I hope that wasn't United, and I think it probably wasn't. But
it wasn't one of the airlines who was represented here today.
It was Minneapolis, so I guess I know what it was.
Yeah.
But we, at United, those follow-on cancellations, our policies will be to take care of the customers and treat them as if they're cancellations that are caused by us, and so to try to provide accommodations in follow-on cancellations that are occurring.
And then would you put them on another airline or compensate them?
We put several 100,000 people on other airlines, and in those situations, our focus in any of those situations is to take care of the customer first. Our operating people are not concerned with a P&L. They're focused on taking care of the customers.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
The same, Congressman. One thing I would add to your question is communication is incredibly important in those situations, and so we have minimum guidelines for intervals between communication updates that we ask our staff to adhere to. And we've also started asking our captains, who we know the customers have deep respect for, in certain irregular operations situations, to also provide an update.
Thank you.
Congressman, really the same thing. We treat those follow-on cancellations the same way. We provide vouchers for hotels and meals and those kinds of things, but the desire is constantly to take care of the customer.
Ms. Filipovich?
Likewise for us at American, and as I've mentioned before, service recovery is really one of our top priorities, and I think your experience is illustrative of the importance of that. And when we get into irregular operations, making sure not only that we're communicating with customers, but we're providing options and providing compensation. So that's something that will always be our focus as well.
Mr. McGee?
Thank you, Congressman. Your joke about flying to London and back may not have been as absurd as you would think, because 2 years ago, I was on a Delta Airlines flight, of course, a U.S. carrier, out of Brussels. There was a mechanical delay for 4 hours. It was handled beautifully. It was textbook. And my companion said, how would you rate Delta and how they've handled this? And I said, A+. But then I pointed out that had the exact same delay, the same mechanical problem, same aircraft, same crew, occurred not in Brussels, but in Atlanta, Delta's hometown, the results would have been very different. The reason that we were flying on a U.S. airline, the reason we were treated the way we were, and it was handled so beautifully with the meal vouchers, with the updates, with accommodations, was because the EU rules were in effect, even for foreign airlines in the EU. And when left to their own devices, unfortunately, situations like yours are not as rare as we would hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Katko.